this content is for kids.
It's not for kids.
Isn't that what I said?
No, it's not for kids. If you are 13 years or younger, this is not for you. Do I have to kill somebody in order to actually make that point across?
No, man, you don't have to kill
Wait
no one.
a second.
Oh, no.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings! You're watching SeptumSin vs. the World. I'm SeptumSin. This is Kotobukijake.
Hey.
And we're here again to inform you about what we've watched over November.
Yes. Over a month ago and even further.
November 2021.
Mm-hmm.
November wasn't a bad viewing time for me.
No.
As you can see, it kind of goes down there. Yeah, hard to really see with
you can't see a phone.
Yeah, but let's just say it wasn't too terrible. It's not quite as much as I did for October.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta look at my October list. That was actually pretty big. And this one, you can see a lot of it's crossed out because I was into December. I was like, oh, wait, no.
Okay.
So November is when I started a series called Have Gun Will Travel. So that's really put a pause on most things I've watched. But I'll go ahead and start us off. And as things come up, and you just let me know when you want to interject in.
Okay.
So let's start off with the first of the month, which is one that we both watched for was it the beginning of Mustache Matinee? I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
The Great Dictator.
Yeah.
So a film with Charlie Chaplin. One of the few talkies that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
well, his first full talk.
yeah, and it was a really good one too.
It
really
was.
good start. Making fun of Hitler before it was cool.
Right. When for some reason people still thought, well, you know, what they do in Germany is their own business, and why would we piss off a world leader who isn't really hurting us? Yeah. And Chaplin was just ahead of the curve. Like, he has said since then that some of the things he put in the movie, by the time the film came out, he was already regretting some of it. But not because he disagreed with it, but he thought that had he known the extent, he would not have been as interested in doing a comedy about it.
Yeah.
And incidentally, one of the things that I start my list with is a documentary called The Tramp and the Dictator, which is on that Criterion collection that we have of the... Did you watch that one? Or?
I might have. Actually,
it's a very fascinating documentary.
I probably did because I did watch a sizable number of the special features. I just didn't include it in my watch it list.
Right. Well, that was the first thing I put on there. And watch the our Movies Galore discussion to get more about that.
Indeed. Now, one movie that I've watched a lot, and you'll probably see this recurring because I'll say, oh, I watched this again, is a movie called Grave Encounters. Now, usually we need something on to go to sleep at night. Well, I don't normally, but... and this was something that we used to play a lot, but I wouldn't put it on this list if I didn't watch the whole thing through, which is very rare that I do. But this time I did. I rewatched that thing through for, some makeup Halloween viewing. And darned if it was not a good film. I really like Grave Encounters. It is a slow burn. It's one of those found footage movies where these guys, they are in this show called Grave Encounters, ghost hunting show. They go to this asylum, and the asylum turns out to be really haunted. Spoilers. And Yeah, it is very creepy. When it starts getting rolling, it is very well done. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this series a lot. And I watched that like on the 2nd of the month. So it was still a pretty early on setting for that. Grave Encounters. Good shit.
Good shit. Something that was... we'll go ahead and skip slightly ahead. One thing that I wouldn't necessarily call good shit, but it was interesting.
Interesting shit.
Yeah. I'm trying to go ahead slowly but surely to get a fair number of short films knocked out for 2021 to, so far I've not been trying very hard. It's pretty much all been animated shorts. But in November, I actually managed to knock out 3 of them. And one was a film called Sugar and Spikes. It's on YouTube, but it does not even have an IMDb page, or it didn't last time I looked. It's okay. It's a little 3D sort of CG, low-budget CG film about a woman who lives in a mysterious old building, who has mysterious powers, who likes to torment the local kids, and it was all right.
Well, hey, so something to catch.
Right.
I hope you keep record of them and where to find them, so that we can get back to them eventually. I've been off of my 2021 viewing, but I think once the year comes by, I'll be back into it.
I was actually pretty heavy on it in November. It's most of what I have here.
So, and this is holiday season, so I like to watch holiday films. So I have no interest in watching non-holiday films. Except for Have Gun Will Travel, which is the greatest holiday show of all time. Yes. Which I'll mention that a lot. Even though it has no bearing on this list. Alright, so on the 3rd. Remember we were talking about that movie, the Giallo movie, what was it? The Night Evelyn Came Out of Her Grave last month. So I watched the other one, The Red Queen. Which, for the life of me, I don't remember hardly anything of. Much like Night Evelyn, at least the premise of Evelyn Came Out of Her Grave was a little bit more memorable. Whereas this one, I enjoyed it more, but I don't remember a darn thing about it. It was a lot more bloody, which is probably why I remember it a little bit more, The Red Queen. Like I said, I mean, it didn't strike me a lot. A lot of this is surface reviews, and if it's not sticking with me, it isn't really worth it to me.
Right. So, I started the month with, or got early on in the month, watched a copy of one of a handful of 2021 films I have already accumulated for the personal collection, and that was my copy of the Marvel film Black Widow, which I regrettably missed in theaters, and I would have liked to have seen that, but I did see it. Technically I have a 4K Blu-ray combo, but without an HD television I was just watching Blu-ray, but it is a good film. It's very well done. Scarlett Johansson, of course, is quite good in the role of Nat Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. The film introduces her, it goes deep into her past, but one thing I was not entirely expecting was it was sort of an origin slash prequel, but it was really more of a, I guess you could say, an in-betweenquel. Like, if I'm remembering correctly, it picks off where Civil War left off, and basically takes place between Civil War and, I want to say Endgame, but I feel, not Endgame, Infinity War.
Yeah.
But I feel like there should be another connecting point mentioned. But you get the idea. It basically is on the tail end of Civil War. So she is on the run. Thunderbolt Ross is after her, trying to find her. And circumstances put her back on a collision course with her sister, who is played by Florence Pugh in a very fun role. I really liked her in the role. And you got some other folks in there. Ray Winstone shows up. You got this dark cabal of basically brainwashing these young women into participating in all these, you know. You also have Rachel Weisz and Rachel Weisz and David Harbour as basically the four of them at one point were a family, and they're forced back together due to circumstances. And it was a fun movie. It was not Marvel's best, but it was not a bad movie. I think it deserved better than it got.
So, have you seen the thread that connects this phase of the Marvel Universe yet? I mean, have they been... I think, was it Secret Wars that they were trying to do this time? I know that they're trying for another Thanos type, Infinity War type thing, but I can't remember what it's leading up to.
I'm not sure. Maybe Secret Wars. I do know that they're really going hard and heavy into the multiverse in the next few films, and that's going to be a big part of it.
Secret Wars might actually be where it leads in.
So yeah, I mean, between Loki, No Way Home, and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, they are leaning hard on that. So
maybe then.
Yeah.
And then of course there's all the other stuff like the WandaVision, which is kind of out there from what I've heard. Yeah. I haven't seen anything past the last phase ending.
Right. Well, you need to get caught up.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
I don't remember if it was October or November where I saw bits and pieces of Loki. I've seen roughly half of this series, but I need to sit down and seriously watch it.
Is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on
I think it's
Disney
still on.
Plus?
I think so.
It's like, yeah, because I think that also ties into some of the stories, but they ended it,
Right.
thank goodness. But that's another one I have to get to. It's like, that's the thing, is they made it work now. They've made it less fun. And I guess if it was the only thing I was watching, it was like, if the only thing I really cared about was the Marvel movies and everything in there, I could just like, I would have had it all done by now.
Well, like Black Widow, for example, ends with they have the end credit thing. It ends with a scene that involves a character who was introduced, I believe, I'm not sure because I haven't seen it, but I think she was introduced in WandaVision. But it's a character I had not yet encountered. But the expectation clearly was there that you would know who this character is.
Yeah.
However, not knowing who it was, I don't think was like a crucial, you're going to hate the movie now.
That's the thing. I'm probably going to have to just go through all of the Marvel shows and then start into the movies.
Yeah.
Except for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., from what I recall, the connections there are not strong enough that it matters as much.
They tried at first and then went in their own direction, yeah.
Yeah, I think they did, like, for the second phase, they were trying to connect, and then they kind of went like, okay, no.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that. All right. Also on the 3rd, I'll go ahead and hit these two at the same.
Okay.
I finally saw Peeping Tom. This was a milestone thing for me because Peeping Tom is one of the major players in the slasher genre. It was this plus Psycho plus Bay of Blood that equaled Black Christmas, which was the first official slasher movie that we know, first modern slasher movie, and then moved on from there. Halloween, I think, came next as one of the next ones to start following that formula.
Mm-hmm.
So it's incredibly important. And we covered another one not too long ago on the show that I felt like pulled a lot from it. Do you remember which one? I kept saying this pulls a lot from it. It was a slasher. I think it was during Maniac, yes. And this one has that kind of vibe to it. It's about this guy who has a camera, and he does a lot of film work. He's a cameraman, professional. But he loves to film the deaths of these women that he puts basically this sword or whatnot on it, so he can actually get a view of them, of their death as they're dying on the screen. He's doing this because he's got this dead mother or something like that that's telling him to do it. I thought it was really well done. I actually like it better than I did Psycho. It felt more modern. I liked it better than Bad Blood. I thought it actually moved faster. It is creepy as heck. And it's worthwhile, and I'm glad I have it on Criterion, even though it's out of print in Criterion, which is sad. This movie needs to remain in print. Come on, Criterion. 4K of that. Give us it back. And lastly, on the third was a busy day. So this month you're going to notice I was really working on trying to catch up to my used materials. And you can see on my used shelf, it looks like I've made a good dent in it. Unfortunately, I haven't done much with it because Have Gun Will Travel, I ran into that, and, well, yeah. 6 seasons of old school Western. As you know, old school TV had hella long series, especially Westerns. Oh my gosh. But I'm going to come and take a break not too long from now. So, Odd Thomas was the next one I watched, which was actually a pretty nice little movie. I've been curious about Odd Thomas for a while, because it supposedly had some sort of Cthulhu-esque type lore and all of that. And it's about this guy who can see ghosts and afterlife type thing. And he is a detective. Sort of like Kid Detective in a way, that movie. But he's got a relationship with the cops. He kind of lives in somewhat poverty, but he never bothers to accumulate a lot. And this major thing is happening in his town where it looks like there's going to be a massive, just like, thing of death happening, a massive killing. And he's got to figure out what it is before it happens and before all those deaths occur. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It's not the best movie I've seen, but nowhere near the worst. If you haven't checked it out, you should if you like those type of things.
Cool. All right. And now, back to Marvel. I actually made it a couple times to the theaters in November, at the start of the month and at the end of the month. And it did not feel like that was the same month. It really didn't. But I did make it out to see Marvel's Eternals, which Eternals is a good example of Marvel. They're pulling from a lot of IPs that I never really was even aware of, let alone gave two shits about. And Eternals is one of those. I'm not at all familiar with those comics. So I pretty much just went into it as you got to see all the parts of the MCU, because they all fit together. And I was fascinated by them giving a movie to Chloe Zhao, of all people. And
what was it like? Was it exactly like Nomadland?
It had elements. Like, I think one of the reasons that the movie probably didn't do quite as spectacularly as Marvel probably expected, but also one of the reasons why it's one of the better films they've done, is that Chloe Zhao is a very gifted director who's very meditative and is willing to just let things play out. Like, she doesn't feel the need to force action and explosions and things like that.
Explode.
But that being said, there is a fair bit of action in Eternals. It is a well-made film. You got Gemma Chan in the main lead role. It's really an ensemble piece, but she is kind of one of the main ones. You've got a nice supporting role from Salma Hayek. You've got key supporting roles from people like Angelina Jolie and some other folks. And it's a good movie. It's a lot of it's fun. I mean, it's not as fun as some of their others, but like I said, it's a good movie. It's quite visually impressive and sets up some interesting stuff in the MCU. And Fu is having a good old time, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's enjoying
All right.
playing with this thing.
Cool.
All right. So, one that I don't know if you rewatched Alligator 1, like I did. But,
or simply Alligator.
Yeah, Alligator.
I didn't rewatch it, no.
I rewatched Alligator 1 because I got a DVD. Now, I heard that they're releasing them now on 4K, but I don't care. I've got a DVD that's an official release. It's Australian. I don't care. Australian's good for alligators anyway. Well, crocs more than alligators. But it's been released on 4K now. It's being released next year on 4K for those of you who want it. Alligator was one that we did cover for the channel earlier on about this. Alligator, they flushed down the toilet into the sewers, grew to a giant killer alligator. Done deal.
Because they do.
It was okay.
It's fun enough.
You can check the video. It's just Inside Movies Galore, Alligator. That was the big one for Dustin. And then Dustin picked, for his birthday this year, Alligator 2. And this one is another alligator, but this one mutated, so it became a mutant electric alligator. And this alligator kills a lot of people in this housing development in Florida.
So or would-be housing development.
Yeah, what they're working to.
Where the slime ball real estate guy is the one who's the real villain of the piece.
There were, there were a couple things that were fun. It was enjoyable. I don't mind having it. Owning the copy I have, it's not enough for me to get the 4Ks, but I'm glad for Dustin. He loves these movies.
It is great, though, that one of the things that's been going on is how they're so rare, they're so out of print. How did you even find a copy? That's been part of our discussion. And then, what was it, a week after we did it, I think Shout announced that both films are getting a re-release on Shout. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's
because I bought the darn thing.
Yeah.
Exactly why.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's worth it because, to tell you the truth, Alligator 1, the only way to watch it is on YouTube, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And Alligator 2, I don't even know if there's an easy way to watch it.
It'd be nice to watch them in something approaching high def.
I mean, this one had the 780p, which is fine by me. It's clear enough. The picture looks fine. It looked good on this TV that's behind him. And it was worthwhile. I think it was worth seeing.
Cool. Yeah.
Then,
of course, that night we also discussed Komodo, which was a very intriguing film. I'm sorry, I forgot you have them all by day, so you probably
I watched that on the 5th.
Yeah. Well, we'll go ahead and do that then. But So Komodo was this very intriguing film where Australia stood in for Emerald Isle, North Carolina, but somehow, inexplicably, everyone had Georgia plates. Go figure. But that's my main takeaway from the movie. But it was pretty fun.
It was kind of like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, a little bit.
They took notes from that.
Oh, yeah.
It was a fun enough little horror reptile thing. It was almost like that other one that he liked a lot, but I can't think of the name of it. But that one that the reptile one, where they were evolving.
That one? Aberration.
Aberration. It kind of like that in a way, but less silly. Well, less silly in the fact that it was just a bunch of Komodo dragons that they released on this island, and apparently the habitat was so good that they breeded in amazing rate and became super, super aggressive. I guess because they'd eaten everything else on the food chain. So how accurate scientifically would that be?
Well, I think we discussed it to some degree on the show.
Yes,
but generally, there is the very real problem that animals and plants are getting introduced to places they don't belong, and seriously, no one knows 90% of the time, no one has any clue ahead of time what the outcome of that would be. Now, the evidence is that Komodo dragons would have a difficult time there. They're probably more likely to become established in a place like the Bahamas.
What about Australia?
Oh, yeah. In the right spot? No question. In the right spot. But, yeah.
Yeah, we discussed a lot of that sort of thing. If you want that background, how, like, sometimes something that looks like it's super endangered becomes an invasive, like, overpopulated
like
species
Burmese
elsewhere.
pythons in the Everglades.
So it's kind of just an odd thing.
Uh-huh.
All right. So let's see here. The 7th.
Although, incidentally, I think I made a comment on the video that was incorrect.
Oh?
I feel like I made this comment, and I think it was on that discussion. I was talking about a particular catfish being introduced into the wrong place, and it has benefited it with no apparent ill effect. And I think I said yellowfin mad tom, and I meant orangefin mad tom.
Oh.
It is a difference. But anyway.
Hey, it's a fin color makes all the difference.
Well, it can.
Let's see here. So on the 7th, I watched Grave Encounters 2. Which, you know, the sequel. Has Cool Duder in it, back when he was, before he lost the weight. And, you know, that was like one of his first major parts that I noticed. And essentially it's about these guys who, they look at the Grave Encounters movie that's been released as if it's, you know, like it is. And this guy who is a would-be, wannabe horror director, and the movies within the movies are actually quite funny. Just because of how bad acted some of them are. And he gets these notifications like, yeah, this was real. They're like, what? Really? And they manage to track down the location of the asylum. And not long after they even go into the asylum, stuff breaks loose. There is still a bit of a drag at the beginning, not quite as bad as the first film. And much like the first film, once that stuff gets going, oh my gosh, it just like takes off. There are a couple of scenes that I thought were really well done, a couple of surprise takes. You should see it. If you like what is it they call found footage horror, this one's actually a very good series.
Okay.
Let's see. Do you want me to go again? Or you
I'll go ahead and throw one out. And now for something completely different.
All right.
So, I try to space out my Netflix viewing so that I don't end up with a whole bunch of them all at once that need to be watched. And I'm not very good at that. But I did manage to knock out one early in the month that I had heard a surprising amount of buzz about. And I was very intrigued. And that is a film from Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the people behind the Lego Movie and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And it's a movie called The Mitchells vs. the Machines, which was had a lot of the same rough cut look to it that Spider-Verse often had, but it had a very distinctive look, and it made liberal use of like basic crummy drawings and whatever as part of but it gave it a sort of a geeky charm, which was really fun. And so basically it's about this really geeky girl who's on the cusp of going off to college, and her best friend essentially is her younger brother, who's this dinosaur fanatic. And then her father is, you know, the well-intentioned guy who just doesn't get it. And the mother is, of course, you know, the glue that holds them all together. And the parents are played by Danny McBride and Maya Rudolph, and I think that both of them did phenomenal jobs. But really, the voice acting overall was solid, including Olivia Colman as the villain of the piece. Basically, you have this family she wants to go to college. She can't wait to go. She's met her friends online. She's excited. And her father hatches this idea at the last minute that they will reconnect
I'll be right
by
back.
a road trip. Because that's always a good idea.
It was more if I'm not back.
Okay. But, so they go on this road trip, and simultaneously, this guy who runs a technology startup company, whatever, that seems to be kind of like Facebook. I want to say like kind of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, a couple things rolled into one. I wouldn't say it's a straight knockoff of Facebook, but you get the rough idea. This guy, who's well-intentioned enough, keeps creating more and more and more tech to make people's lives better and better. And he creates full-on AI. And it doesn't go according to plan. But it's different from the usual. It's actually the old, outdated AI that he unceremoniously throws aside, who's voiced by Olivia Colman, who decides to turn the tables and starts a robot apocalypse where they capture all the humans and turn them into virtual slaves or whatever. And so it's up to this dysfunctional family to save the day. And it's a fun movie. I liked it. It's very creative. Got a good charm to it. And I think I timed that pretty well.
Yeah, I was. I had to go help in the kitchen upstairs. So,
All right.
I love the Mitchells versus the Machines. It was a fun movie. It wasn't the best animated film of the year that I've seen so far, but it was a fun one.
And it will be a contender, no doubt.
And I loved the creativity. I loved that like drawn art style and the little things that they put in there. Normally I'd say it's like way over proportioned and too much, but for this particular film, it was not. And I love the reuse of the pug. All right.
The pug, yes.
So I watched, because I'm trying to help Dane with his Alice. What was it?
April in Wonderland.
April in Wonderland, that's upcoming. And we're going to even be trying to film something for his channel as well. He's coming up with the ideas, and he's giving them to us, and then we're going to work it into something. So it's going to be fun. I went ahead and I got one of these used ones because it's mostly out of print, and that's the series Alice, which is a mini-series that came in. I don't know if you remember this mini-series. It's one that kind of had a semi-modern take. Reminds me a little bit of Mirror Mask. Alice runs into this individual that she's like hot on, and he gets kidnapped, but gives her this ring, kind of like a marrying gift. And then she ends up getting abducted herself to Wonderland, where the Red Queen is harvesting people's emotions, kidnapping people from like the regular, harvesting their emotions and selling them on the street as a drug. It's a very interesting way of doing it. I love the art design. There's a little bit of soullessness to the whole thing. It's not quite as... It's a little bit more empty than it should be. But it's still a fascinating series. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I like the take on the Mad Hatter. I thought that overall it was a fun series, and I enjoyed the watch. It really was. It was a pleasure to get through. Out of the Alice in Wonderland adaptations I've seen, it's still up there. I did go ahead and purchase a copy of the porno, because Dane really wants to. Dane's like, "Can you rip me a copy of that?" And I'm like, "I don't have it." It's like he's like, your collection's not going to be complete without it. I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." It's like, "Here's a link to one that's relatively cheap." I'm like, "Okay, fine."
Nice. That's kind of funny. Okay, speaking of adaptations of properties that Disney touched about that time, although this one unfortunately is not a porno, See, is Disney's. They're going through an interesting phase right now.
Disney's porno?
No. They're going through an interesting phase right now where they're either doing remakes of established properties
Or pornography.
they're trying to rebrand
Yes.
characters. And seldom have they tried harder to completely rebrand a character than they did this year with the film Cruella, where we saw Emma Stone as the titular character who's actually called Estelle until she adopts the stage name Cruella, and eventually she adds Deville at the end, is, just for fun. Basically, it introduces us to all the characters that we know from the animated classic film. We've got you do meet Roger and Anita before they were a couple, and you do Estelle has actually grown up on the streets of England in the company of Horace and Jasper. They're essentially adopted brothers to her. And I really liked kind of what they did with this, except there's just a couple of issues. One is Cruella is a character who, in her initial version, the original Cruella de Vil, the best thing that can be said about her is that is one of the best villain songs ever made. But she herself is almost the antithesis of anything that I would find desirable or good in a woman. She is a horrible, horrible, horrible human being. And luckily this film doesn't try to just set up that Cruella. It completely rebrands her. And the way the film turns out, you can't really see the trajectory being the same. Essentially, that character in the film is played by Emma Thompson, who is Estelle's mentor in the fashion world. And we come to find out a real piece of work. I'm not going to say any more in case anyone wants to watch it. And there's a few twists, so there's some spoilers. But I will say this is a film, if you have not seen it yet, you will need to watch it because it will be a top contender for costume design. And probably for a couple others too. But it's a fun movie.
So it's essentially Maleficent.
It was a lot more fun than Maleficent.
But it's the same concept.
It's the same basic
they rebranded
idea.
Maleficent, especially with the second movie.
The big difference is Angelina Jolie kind of phoned in that performance, whereas Emma Stone really gives it her all. And that's a big difference, when you're a leading lady is, yeah.
Alright, let's see here. The 9th. I watched a movie called Circle of Iron.
Ha!
Iron. Now this is an interesting film.
No, you, Brandon.
It's a kind of sword and sorcery type thing, Conan the Barbarian, Beastmaster, that sort of thing. Where you've got this guy, he's going through this, he's sort of a martial artist, and it's kind of funny because the film was actually written, according to this, it was partially written by Bruce Lee. About this guy who is trying to find the greatest knowledge in the world, and he's trying to track this down, and he has to go through various tests and phases, and then of course you get to the end and you find out what it is, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, even though it's an old film. It's like it came out like not long after Bruce Lee's death,
Right.
So yeah, Bruce Lee was working on a lot of projects before he died, and that's kind of sad. But it's still pretty good. It's a fun movie. You kind of have to. It doesn't quite fit with today's standards, so keep that in mind. It's not bad, but it's not like perfection like they ask these days. Even though it's kind of funny when I say perfection and what people like is not so much. But still, It's still a fun one. If you like sword and sorcery types, if you like Conan the Barbarian, if you liked Beastmaster or these other ones, I think you would like this one.
Cool.
You want me to go again, or you want? Are you?
How many you got left?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
You should probably go ahead and do another one
Okay.
then.
Some of them are.
Some of them are movies galore.
But there's not that many. I think we had 4. So the next one, we'll go ahead and get the 10th out of the way. I went ahead and watched Conspiracy, which I had gotten on my used stuff, and I got this at Plan 9, which is really, I got it really cheap, and it was worth it. It is a really good movie, amazing acting. Essentially, it's about that time where they were in World War II, where they're meeting. Theoretically, this may or may not have happened, but there are records of this where they had this meeting with a lot of the top generals in Hitler's army, and they were talking about the final solution and kind of put the button forward. It is an intense movie. All it is a meeting, but the intensity of it is amazing.
Good times.
I was blown away by it. It was really good. I'm sad I hadn't seen it. Kim had talked about it all the time, but we never had the movie, so I was like, thank God I finally have it. Have you seen it?
No, but I feel like I've heard about it.
I know you've heard of it. I mean, if anything, the actors in it, it's pretty big there. I'll pull the DVD so you can take a look at it when you're going next, and I'll go. It's on that side.
Well,
somewhere.
yeah, it's probably right here, isn't it?
No, it's probably on the end of that first row.
Okay.
The other one I watched is one I know Jacob is familiar with, which was I upgraded my DVD version to the Blu-ray version of Empire Records. I've always wanted to upgrade because the DVD version is okay, but it's had this thing where you can't skip forward or skip back. It just plays all the way through. And some old DVDs used to do that, so I'm glad that I've got one that...
Plus, it was a flipper, and flippers are...
Yeah.
It's always good to replace if you can.
So, so now I've got the Blu-ray of it. I got that also really cheap from Plan 9, and...
Nice.
I mean, Empire Records is a classic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's in that same thing. I always like to put that one in high fidelity back to back.
Who knows where
fun.
thoughts come from? They just appear.
But that's also in that age with Clerks and a lot of others that have similar concept of people working these jobs. This was Gen X at their peak of, at their peak of youth power.
And Mo would appreciate that even though we are Richmonders, I had never freaking heard of Gwar until I saw that movie. That was my introduction.
I heard of them earlier than that, but still, it is entertaining. I've only heard one of their records. So yeah.
Okay. So actually, that's an appropriate enough lead-in because talking about music, because the next program that I have on here, it gets away from the 2021 stuff for a little bit. Actually, Mom had picked up a program that she really wanted to watch, and I was like, yeah, sure, if nothing else, it'll be some good music. And it was a program called Dolly Parton, 50 Years at the Opry. Oh, Kenneth Branagh and Stanley Tucci. That is a good... Colin Firth. Yeah, that's a good...
That's a heck of a cast.
Exactly. So it's not the first... Supernova's not the first time Firth and Tucci have been together. Cool. So anyway, Dolly Parton, 50 Years at the Opry, as you can probably guess. It was a big special celebrating 50 years of Dolly at the Opry.
And yet she was nowhere near it.
But, and of course it kicks off with a performance of 9 to 5, which I maintain that is one of the best original songs in movie history. That is a kick-ass song. And of course she is the one behind Jolene, which is another favorite. There's some other really good ones. Some of them are performed by her. Some are covers. Like Lady A does Islands in the Stream, the big hit she had with Kenny Rogers, and it's a nice version. For some reason, inexplicably, Hank Williams Jr. shows up to perform one of his dad's songs. I don't know what the hell that has to do with the Dolly Parton tribute. So that was, one of the weaker parts. Not that... I will say this. All three of the Hank Williams, solid performers. Don't care for much of what goes on behind the scenes with that group, but especially Hank Jr.
No, sir, I don't like it.
I can't speak as much for Hank III. I don't know as much about him, but they're gifted musicians. Just again, I'm not really sure what he was doing, singing Hank Sr. songs at a Dolly tribute. That makes no sense. But anyway, solid thing. Dolly Parton is, of course, this bubbly ball of energy and always has been. Yeah. And so it's always interesting to see anything, of all the people in country, it's like, if you try and think of the people that would probably be the one person everyone can agree that they like, she's probably on the short list.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. Well, actually, in music, even in, music overall.
It is fascinating. Yeah. I came close to going to Dolly World. We passed it when we went to Memphis.
Good times.
Well, yeah, you were there.
Well, and actually, my first time in Memphis, we went to Graceland, but you had to pay to really see anything. So we were like, screw that, and we left.
Let's see. So, on the 11th, I finally watched the latest Bad Ben film. Ben 9, Ben 9. So, the ninth film.
Yeah.
And it was alright.
Yeah.
I mean, I like a lot of the Bad Ben stuff. I love the cheesiness of it. The fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously. It understands it's in on the joke.
Okay.
And eventually I'm going to do a Bad Ben series on the channel. I'm hoping to hook up with Mo to do this. Give you a rest. Unless you really want to get in on this.
I mean, I'm curious. I'll have to give them a go, I guess.
So, but I leave you as the option. But if you opt in, then you're in for all 9. So, benign. So, essentially, this guy, he had ended up getting this house at a sheriff's sale, and the house turns out to have been haunted. But it's not just the house, it's a whole bunch of other crap going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it just goes into weird places as it goes. Like Bad Ben is this creature that's kind of like the Jersey Devil that's out there. There's a demon living in the house of ghosts. Towards the end of the movie, he's like, Ben, here's a grocery list. I need you to go get these things for me. As he goes. It's not as good as some of the other ones. It's better than the pandemic one. And it does take place right on the heels of the pandemic ending. I actually went back and watched the ending of the pandemic one just so I could figure out, okay. So I understood more once I got to the end of the movie. It's fun. If you like Bad Ben, you'll like it. If you like kind of like the again, found footage type films, but you also, the first one actually has some good scares to it, and the others are kind of, actually the first 2. After that, it stops taking itself seriously. Shoot, even the first one has parts that are funny. So, if you haven't watched it, you should check it out. Check out Bad Ben. They're all on Tubi.
Good times.
They're all free on Tubi. All right. Why don't I move on? I'll do the 12th because that's multiples.
Okay.
I watched a Bruceploitation film called The Fist of Bruce Lee. I don't remember much about it. I remember there was like a guy who had like an iron hand. and stuff.
and stuff and things.
It was boring.
Huh.
But a lot of Bruceploitation films are boring. Some of them are silly. And that's what I was hoping for. This one was kind of boring. I may or may not keep it. Because it was something I inherited from my father, I may keep it because it has some memories to it. Still debatable. The other one, though, I watched was very much the identical, called Exit Through the Gift Shop, which we both watched this before because it was up for an Oscar. And this was kind of a Banksy. It was a Banksy documentary. I remember how he actually had said in this, it's like, I will never do this again. I took all the film that this guy shot because, he was given the chance to shoot it. And the film was terrible. So I took all of his stuff, I distracted him while I put together this film. And the film is about street artists. It's about these kind of guerrilla artists that go about. And this one guy who was documenting most of it. And his rise, Mr. Brainwash, as he called himself. I don't know if he's still there, but he made a lot of money off of this phase because a lot of this weird street art. You got these street artists that were hounded by the police, and it turned out into people just basically upending street corners and stuff and selling them for millions of dollars on auction markets. And Banksy being one of the most popular of them. Banksy's still popular. He's gone legit pretty much nowadays. As legit as he goes. He is still considered odd, and he likes to destroy his own art. So he is one of those artists. All right.
Oh, that was it for that day? Okay.
That was all I had to say about that.
Okay. So I actually have, if memory serves, I think I watched the next three all on the same day, but I'm not going to do them all at once. I'm going to spread them out. And the first one is a short film, another short film, called Napo. And Napo it was really cute and kind of touching, and it had a pretty solid Pixar vibe to it, but it wasn't Pixar. It was, I don't remember the studio, but essentially, and I'm not remembering all the details, so if I get anything wrong here, forgive me. But if I'm remembering correctly, it was essentially about, you have this young child and her mother and her. I can't remember the. I think it was a girl, but their mother. They bring the grandfather into their home. The grandfather can no longer live on his own. He is suffering from dementia, which has been a major theme lately in movies. Has been so. This one that is primarily about the child learning to relate to the old, their elder, but also they do eventually end up finding a connection. And, like I said, it's a nice little film. It's worth a look. Kind of touching. Actually struck me as a strong contender for the Oscar list. I'd be kind of surprised if it's not in the running. But, yeah.
Yeah, it does sound interesting, if anything. I was trying to look up my other one because I couldn't remember what it was about. I was like, oh, that's what this was. I watched one of the 8 films to die for, one of the newer grouping called Suspension. And this one was about this person who was the daughter of this guy who killed a lot of people. He escapes, he starts killing people again. So she's got to protect herself and her little brother from this madman while she's kind of being picked on like Carrie by her friends. Yeah, not a big thing. So I'm going to let you cover Hook and Penguin Drum because of the two next one.
Ooh, Penguin Drum's a little early, I guess, but yeah. So
That's when I watched it.
right, I watched it at the last possible minute mostly. No, I think I'd started watching it by that point. So yeah. Anyway, so for our mustache matinee, we covered Hook, the Steven Spielberg film in which Dustin Hoffman dons a rather notable mustache as Captain James Hook. You also have Robin Williams in the role of Peter Banning.
No mustache.
A.k.a. Peter Pan. Maggie Smith is Granny Wendy, a.k.a. Wendy Moira Angela Darling.
No mustache.
No mustache there. Gwyneth Paltrow has a mustache. No, oh wait, that was Shakespeare in Love. So Gwyneth Paltrow in one of her first roles, a split-second cameo. You got Bob Hoskins with some facial hair as Smee. And you got a number of other individuals. Glenn Close has a good deal of facial hair in her appearance. And of course, Charlie Korsmo and, of course I forgot the girl's name, as the kids, who neither of them really stayed in acting. It's kind of strange. Yeah. But Hook is, as we discussed on our 3+ hour discussion, a flawed movie. Some find it more so than others. But it is a good movie. It is a movie that many of us have a great deal of nostalgia for. And even without the nostalgia glasses, it's still a good movie that gets an unfairly bad rep. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely worth a look or two, you know. It's a fun riff on the Peter Pan story, you know. And yes, Hoffman is a great Captain Hook.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Bob Hoskins is a wonderful Smee. You know, and you got some good stuff there. And then, of course, for our anime anti-climax at the end of the month, mm-hmm. we covered Kunihiko Ikuhara's Mawaru Penguin Drum, a.k.a. Penguin Drum, which is a batshit insane fever dream of a series that is glorious to look at, and holy crap is it weird. And we had a fun time discussing that one. So check out on this channel our anime anti-climax for November.
Yeah, we go in depth with that.
Yes.
And more depth than we normally do with the Inside Movies Galore, so yes.
Right. And yet the discussion was shorter. But part of that was we only had 4 people.
Hook was the one that went for 3 hours.
Hook we did have a lot of people on for that discussion. That was part of it.
Well, we had a ton of people last time. I guess we'll have a ton of people this time too.
We probably will. I think all through December. Yeah.
Oh, we testing that 10-person limit right
Well,
there.
And also I threw down the gauntlet last week, so hopefully we'll have big groups all through next year.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
All right, let's see here. Well, on the 18th, I got a whole bunch.
Oh.
18th was a very what's the word?
Busy?
Busy day. Not a busy day at work, apparently. I watched Game Change, which is an excellent movie. Another one from my used. Matter of fact, these two of these 3 are used. It is a great film. It's a film essentially about McCain and mostly about Sarah Palin and her run, if anybody remembers that. And I really loved it.
I would prefer not to.
I mean, Woody Harrelson does an excellent job. Everybody that's involved is excellent. The person who plays Sarah Palin, amazing acting in that.
Is that Julianne Moore, or am I making that up?
I don't know. It's been so long. Well,
so long.
Yeah, it's been a month.
Yeah, I guess so. A month can last forever sometimes.
Well, especially since I don't remember names of people who do things, yes. Except for maybe occasionally. Like Woody Harrelson has struck me with enough that I remember his name.
Oh, yeah, it's hard to forget him.
So, I mean, again, a pretty good one, pretty riveting. If you haven't seen it and you like political type dramas, you should. it's hard for me to say whether our conservative friends should watch this or not. I mean, I don't consider it all that insulting. I feel they try to be a little bit more accurate. I guess if you're a huge Sarah Palin fan, if you're one of those people who was saying that she was like this super smart genius and all that, then probably not. But if you're kind of looking for a kind of realistic view of things, like that interaction with McCain, they really make him out.
It was
well.
Julianne Moore and Ed Harris as McCain,
and they make him out pretty well. I really thought it was good. It felt like it was an inner look at some of the older politics before it got really scummy. Really scummy on all sides.
Where people could actually laugh at themselves. Like, Palin supposedly was not terribly offended by the Tina Fey's version of her, but then again, that one was dead on. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. Of course, they say that some people do take out, like they say that, I mean, it's said that Hitler himself supposedly actually liked The Great Dictator and thought it was funny, and he especially loved the globe scene, but, he wouldn't have said that in public.
Yeah, he banned it. People weren't allowed to watch it in Germany. But
he was. He and his inner circle were allowed to watch it.
Yes.
Where he can, behind the scenes, laugh at it. So I did watch an Animu.
Oh.
2 Animu, really, which was GeoBreeders and GeoBreeders Breakthrough. Which, is about this group of people who are like mercenaries for hire, essentially. And they take on these like cat demon things and take them out. And it's one of those where you got the all-girl team, the one guy, and they beat the shit out of the guy. Which there'd been like this big thing about like this big thing on a discussion on the anime group about Redo the Healer and how violence against women is wrong at all costs, and no anime where there's violence will be appreciated. And then somebody put up one of their favorite anime was Love Hina, and I'm like, okay, there is a double standard here. Redo the Healer was not the right one to go on about because that's rape. It wasn't necessarily rape, but I do find it sad that a lot of times there's that double standard that you could play off beating the crap out of the guy for laughs. And, I mean, you were one person who loves Love Hina.
Oh,
and, I mean, part of the funny part is watching him be senselessly beaten by Naru and everybody else. One of your favorite characters is extremely vicious towards him.
Yeah, theoretically she has her reasons, but
still, it's still not good enough.
I feel like it's one of those things where...
Or Ranma with Akane, beating the crap out of him when he's not doing anything.
Naru and Akane are both overly reactionary. Like, Ranma is another good example. Some of the others, like Shanpu and Ukyo, she has a weird shyness reflex where she beats him out of shyness. But generally, with Shanpu, he deserves half of what she gives him.
The sad thing is, that was the conversation. So, okay, I've got to get rid of the healer because... I'm sorry, a person tells me, no, you can't watch this because of X, or you can't watch this, I'm like, well, screw you.
I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
I do what I want.
Well, that's the thing, is I get like, it's a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
And I admit, it's been selling really well, and I'll tell you why it's been selling well, because people keep telling you, no, you can't watch it. You're not allowed to watch this, which... Yeah, great job. You're selling it. But, I mean, imagine Love Hina.
Maybe we need to start a shadow campaign where we start telling everyone, you can't, for the love of God, you can't watch Netflix's Cowboy Bebop, and the demand will grow so high Netflix will have to renew it for a second season.
There you go.
Oh, that'd be great.
But but imagine like Love Hina.
Yeah.
Except all the cast are male except for one female, And the
Okay.
female gets the crap beaten out of her at the same rate by a man who thinks she's looking in on them and is upset or jealous.
Mhm.
Now, and they try to play it for laughs. Now,
It would not play so well.
that would not play very well at all.
No.
So
It wouldn't have played so well then.
yeah, it wouldn't have played well then. And that's the thing is, I looked at that and I was like, this one really embodies that double standard of what was considered, especially for back then. But still,
Mhm.
I can usually look past it. And I didn't mind Geobreeders overall. It's like, this is just silly. It's silly.
Stop that. It's silly.
That it got like that. So, do I think it's a bad show? No. Do I think Love Hina is terrible? Not really. It's just interesting that it is like that sort of thing.
Okay.
All right. Well, but lastly, I beat a game.
Oh.
I beat the Final Fantasy III Pixel Perfect Remaster. And it really was fun. I enjoyed it. They managed to make it so it was bearable. I've tried playing the 3D version, but it's just long. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't get into it. But this one I could. It's kind of almost an SNES 16-bit version of the game, and it plays very well. They balance the classes out. You no longer have to have all of a certain class. Like there were certain bosses that you had to be all of this class to take them on. Like no, I played a set of classes through most of the game, and at the end I upgraded to ninjas and the high-powered wizards, and then beat the last boss without too much trouble. And it was good. I'm glad that I played it. With completion of that, it completes a milestone for me. Because Final Fantasy 2 and 3 were missing from my original playthroughs because they didn't come out in America originally. They skipped to 4 and then called it 2. And they skipped 5. And called 6 3. But now it's all kind of restored. 1 through 6 are being made into these pixel remasters. 1 through 5 is complete, and they're finishing off 6 soon enough. And I have finally beaten Final Fantasy 1 through 10.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Congratulations.
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
Congratulations! Congratulations!
Congratulations.
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations! Thank you all.
That I've completed all of them. Out of the ones that aren't online, there are 3 left that I have to beat before I can say I've beaten all the actual single-player Final Fantasies, 12, 13, and 15. And once those have been beaten, I can say I've beaten all of the real Final Fantasies.
All the real fantasies, huh?
Well, Final Fantasy, to me, I don't know, an online MMO should not count as a numbered entry in a series.
Right.
That would be like, okay, you've got a series that you really like, right? Like, I don't know, what's a good movie series that you enjoy? Like The Godfather. Okay, let's say that The Godfather Part 2, instead of a movie, was a full-on TV series, but they called it The Godfather Part 2, the movie. But it was a 24-episode TV series. And then they did the third movie, and they called it Godfather Part 3, and it was a movie again. Would that bother you in the slightest?
It would bother me a little bit.
Especially if they labeled it the movie?
I wouldn't be able to call the series movies, no.
Okay, so this is why I can't really call 11 and 14.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
well, let's take a real-life example then.
Yes.
Because this is fundamentally the same.
Mhm.
Are you saying that we should not call the Downton Abbey movie a movie? Because it is basically an extended episode?
Well, because it is considered an extended episode, I guess you could call it a movie. But
I mean, well, it's considered a movie, but it is fundamentally, basically, an extended episode.
yeah, I mean, it probably should just be a special.
Right?
But that's the thing is, I don't know. Some things like that irk me. That's why I can't really put those two as really, in my opinion, I don't feel like count as numbered entries.
Or like the, again, talking about like the original Cowboy Bebop, the movie was basically like a triple-length episode that...
Anime movies are kind of odd in that way, especially when they're coming about series, because a lot of them are more like specials.
Yeah. This was like what they call it, an in-between-quel. But you often will have side stories, which are really just, you know. And yeah, actually, there's one coming up. This is not part of a franchise, but the, what is it, Super Criminals or whatever?
Well,
I've seen that listed as like an ONA, but I've also seen it listed as a movie.
Yeah.
And of course now with Netflix, you don't know what the hell anything is. Like that Bob Ross documentary, IMDb listed as a TV special. And it's like, it's a Netflix movie. What's the difference?
So there's the question. So if a listed there as a TV special, does that mean it does not count for our awards?
We might have to discuss that on case by case.
I really do think that we
Have
need
you
to
seen
do
that
case by
movie
case.
yet?
It is awesome. And
did it strike you as more television than movie?
No, it's no different than any other Netflix documentary movie. So I don't see where the difference is between that.
Or like last year, I thought to say that Small Axe was a series of short films. Well, actually, feature films, they're just short. But Amazon said, well, we're going to call this a series. You know, never mind that the first 3 screened at film festivals.
But you see that, by them doing that,
that
Bob Ross movie is now out of the play for the Oscar.
Theoretically, yeah. I don't know how they're going to do the documentary rules this year. You never know.
It should be up for it. It is like a Roadrunner should be up for it.
Yeah.
Even though I haven't seen it yet.
Well, I need to see both of those, definitely. So speaking of documentaries, actually, one that will probably not be on our list because at the end of there was a Q&A and the director said that he's probably going to redo the film anyway, so it's probably not going to come out till 2022. But our friend Dane participated a while back in a documentary that finally got a cut this year. And strangely enough, I think I was probably the only person in the group that joined the live thing. So that was kind of weird because it was a documentary about horror and all these horror geeks sat it out. But so it was a documentary called In the Dark, where Dane and a number of other individuals, including Sean Phillips and a lot of people that I wouldn't recognize, but you would know, and Mo would know, and Dave would know, and all these people would know. It was a documentary where they were essentially talking about their earliest memories of horror, the horror films that influenced them, etc., etc. It was a very interesting idea. And I think that the execution was good, but I honestly think that it ran much longer than it needed to. I like hearing all those different voices, and very few of them were overused individually. But especially the first section, it got old after about the 20th person. You know what I mean?
A lot of people.
There were a lot of people involved. And then most of them answered the first question, which was your earliest memories of horror. And there's only so many answers one can get for that.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's a good thing the director's going back to retool it. But I do think it could end up being a good film. And it was really cool being able to participate in something like this where you can see something early. There was a Q&A. I ended up bowing out after 20, 30 minutes of the Q&A, but I watched a little bit of it and listened in. I wasn't an active participant because I'm like, I just don't know enough to talk about this stuff. But it was interesting, and like I said, I look forward to seeing what the finished product will ultimately be for that.
Yeah.
Could be one for our 2022 list.
It might be a good one to watch anyway, because it sounds like a similar format to what I want to do when I actually try and do my movie project. And having too many voices is going to be an issue. So it's the best. And as I've said, I think the idea is when you ask questions, I've thought about putting it to a format of about 5 questions and then asking and doing the best answers to those questions. And maybe try and get variety amongst the people. All right, let's see. Another used one from my father, Girl Next Door. I don't know, you seen this one? It's sort of like
I know which one you're talking about, though.
Yeah, essentially it's about about this guy. This girl moves next door, and he's pretty hot on her, and she likes him, so they kind of start to date, and then he finds out that she's actually a porn star, and that causes some issues, and that's pretty much the entirety of it. It's not a bad film. It was entertaining enough. I enjoyed it, so it's decent. Well, decent in a sense.
Good times.
Also, we finished the Great British Bake Off season 10, which was a lovely season. I love the Great British Bake Off. It's left at one season. That was the 2020 season. They had to adapt. They isolated them all for like 2 months from all their families and all that stuff. They had them all isolated with the crew during the pandemic so that they all could go on without masks or anything because they were in that kind of bubble.
Right.
And it was really well done. I was glad to see it. I was glad to see they were able to do it, how they interact. The Great British Bake Off, if you haven't seen it, it is this competition in the UK where some of the best bakers that they try out all get together on this estate in this tent, and they do baking challenges as they eliminate to the final one. It's very different than traditional American shows. A lot of shows like Chopped, they're all like, vicious, you're my competition, you're my enemy. And they try to play up the drama and stuff like that. No, not at all. They help each other out. They get along very well. At the end, they visit each other. They talk with each other afterwards. They form friendships. It's a wonderful series that feels wholesome and nice. And that is something that we really need more of in this day and age.
Right.
To me, nothing wrong with the Great British Bake Off, and some of the cool things that they make. It's just really neat what they can do. It is worth seeing.
Okay.
Unless you hate food.
All right. So, should I do another one, or do you have another?
Let's see. Why don't we cover this one next,
Okay,
just because
cool.
it's one that we both saw. On the 22nd, I saw Maniac.
Ah, yes.
So, I figured that you would...
Another entry for the Mustache Matinee, which did have a couple of decent mustaches in it.
Yeah, it did. And that one was very similar to Peeping Tom. I mean, you had your guy there that was killing people and then making them into... putting their pieces on mannequins and pretending that they're them. And it was...
He's a maniac.
Which I believe was made originally for the movie, and they altered it.
Well, yeah, I had read, actually, we saw a correction to that story today, and that was actually what I had read, but I didn't want to speak up and try to counteract all the
I didn't know anything about it. They were just doing it.
So supposedly the people who wrote the song Maniac were writing it more because of real life events, but they were inspired after watching the film. And it ended up like this was while the film was in production, so it was intertwined with the story because they thought that maybe they wanted to get it in the film and it just didn't pan out, and it was, but it ended up being, of course, used in a very different film.
Slightly different.
At least I think it's different. I've heard it's different.
Yeah, slightly different.
I hate to say it, but I'm not certain I've seen Footloose.
Oh, I have. multiple times.
I have a copy. I just don't know if I've seen it.
So let's see. What have we got? Let's count what we've got left. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 left.
I have 5 left. So, yeah.
All right. So we're kind of even now.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And
5,
one of
6,
those
7.
is probably one that we were both covering, right?
None of these are for Inside Movies Galore or anything else.
Didn't you watch Roger Rabbit?
I did not. I had to go on memory that week.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess I have 6 left. Okay.
So, well, why don't we cover Roger Rabbit while we're at it?
Well, we could. I'd be skipping way ahead, but I'll go ahead and do it.
Might as well.
So yeah, the last one we did for Mustache Matinee, on account of about 2.5 minutes of screen time for Yosemite Sam, and I guess maybe one of the bullets that Eddie Valiant got from him.
Anybody who voted for that one,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, if you voted for it, then you agreed
I did not.
that it was a Mustache
I'm
Matinee
glad
contender.
I am glad we covered Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It was an odd choice for the month, but it is a quality film for those of you who have not seen it. Strangely enough, one of my brothers watched it with me, and afterwards he was like, he seemed kind of shell-shocked. I think he remembered it differently. I kind of remembered it differently too, but I appreciate the film for what it was trying to be. I stirred up a bit of controversy in our discussion by talking about how violent it was. Apparently no one else saw that. So that was interesting.
Cartoons were violent.
Holy crap, yeah. But at any rate, so definitely watch it. That was another long discussion, but again, we had a lot of people involved. But again, there was a lot to be said, and I definitely recommend checking it out.
It was a tighter discussion.
A little tighter, yes. A little less repetition. But it's a quality film. For those 3 of you who don't know anything about it, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a live-action animated hybrid from Robert Zemeckis, who has made a career out of trying to push the envelope on film technologies.
Yeah.
And he really did do a good job of pushing the envelope with this one.
Nothing quite like it since either.
Nothing quite like it before or since, because Disney and Warner's actually came to a gentleman's agreement which allowed for Donald and Daffy Duck to share a stage together, for Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny to share a scene together, for a few other notable people from both of their stables sharing the screen together, and then just a couple years later, Warner's went to Disney and said, hey, can you return the favor? And Disney basically told them to bugger off, and since then, no, it's probably never going to happen again.
Until Disney buys Warner Brothers.
Until Disney truly has the Infinity Gauntlet complete. They will probably then do whatever they want with Warner's properties.
Well,
but in the meantime,
right now the rumor is that they're after Sony right now.
Yeah.
And they've made offers.
Yeah.
Makes me kind of worry about that, because Sony also owns the distribution for Aniplex and Funimation and all of that. Can you imagine them Disney-fying and censoring all of that worse than what they did?
Yeah.
More reason to get these on. Get them now.
Yes, get them while you can. And then further, last note that, again, as Forrest mentioned many, many times, we had a Mustache Matinee where we had 2 Bob Hoskins films, but no Mario Brothers.
I know, we need to cover that eventually. We need to do one that's a perfect one for Roger Rabbit, and doesn't have anything to do with Mario Brothers the movie at all, but then do Mario Brothers the movie to make up for it.
Maybe.
Like cartoons. Oh, the month of classic cartoons, and then do the Mario Brothers movie.
Well, you could call the Super Mario Brothers Super Show a classic cartoon.
Exactly. It would be like, that's what we're basing it on. Hey, it would be a stronger
Right.
premise than what we based this one on.
That's right.
So we'll just go back and forth at this point.
Okay.
I started up my Christmas viewing, so I'm going to skip ahead to the last non-Christmas related film I did, and then we're going to move into that. So on the 28th, I actually completed a Netflix show I was watching, which was Masters of the Universe Revelations, which was the Kevin Smith Masters of the Universe thing. This one didn't do very well because of Geek Rage. So I feel you. The first half, everybody was like, this SJWBS, they've taken He-Man away and they're making Teela there. I occasionally would, just to PO people, I would say, isn't that the one where they're killing off He-Man and making it all female? Just to mess with people. But still, I didn't see it, so I was like, I haven't seen it yet. Need to. And I watched the first half, and the first half was dark. The whole series is dark as hell. It calls back a lot. I mean, the toy company that produces the toy line had come to Kevin Smith and say, write this for us. So, of course, it pimps out the old toy lines. You got to see the old vehicles. You got a lot of callbacks. And, yeah, there is a lot of darkness there. And, yes, the first half does center on Teela because He-Man has been basically... He-Man and Skeletor got wiped out at the very beginning. So that's not really a spoiler. But... and of course, Mark Hamill is playing Skeletor, and he does an excellent job. The second half involves more He-Man, a lot more He-Man, and it really does hinge more on the ensemble than it does on any one individual. It does hit on Teela and Evelyn more, but they are characters that deserve some of the stories. It had a lot more depth. The characters felt a lot more realistic than the old cartoon. If you're like defending it, go back and watch some of these episodes and see what you're going about. This was perfect. No, it was terrible. It was very terrible. I know. And they had even a callback that showed that it was that he intends to do another season. I don't know whether they're going to get it or not. Much like with Cowboy Bebop, the nerd rage was very strong on this one. And this one was a really good show. Like I said, I can't say with Cowboy Bebop yet. I haven't gotten to watch it yet. Too much in the pipeline. But I did finally watch this one. And it was worth it. I mean, have you watched that one?
No.
See, there you go.
But then I never really gave a damn about that.
Yeah, but still, it was worthwhile to keep going.
I admit that I'm probably a bad child of the 80s to say I don't give a damn about Masters of the Universe, but you know.
You never watched He-Man?
I mean, I watched it. It was okay. It was there. But, you keep referencing Bebop. We'll be talking about that in our December discussion, no doubt about it. But one that probably could be subtitled Masters of the Universe, in a sense. Honestly, I was hoping to do a little bit more of a follow-up to In the Dark with this, but then we ended up going off on a bunch of tangents. But to the filmmakers of In the Dark, my criticisms about films being overstuffed apply to big-budget films as well. And that definitely was the feeling that I was left with Godzilla vs. Kong. I felt like they tried to fit a lot into that movie. That they probably didn't have to hit all of those story beats. I think I'm thinking particularly of Kyle Chandler's daughter and her friends. I felt like that subplot really just was extra and padded the runtime. Because you already have all the setup and delivery of Godzilla and the setup and delivery of Kong, and that right there is a full movie. You don't really need all the extra. But it is a fun enough movie. I liked the individual Godzilla and Kong movies better, but it was good. and it had some good effects, and it was pretty enjoyable, and it might end up for a couple of Versus Awards.
I need to see it. I owned it, but I really want to also see the Kong movie first.
You need to see that first, yes.
And I've seen the 2 Godzilla movies, so I've just got one left. But it looks good.
King of the Monsters is still the best one of the franchise.
I've heard Skull Island is good.
It's very good.
So we started off our Christmas viewing for 2021 with a revamp, I guess you could say, a reboot of a classic holiday movie series that everybody agrees needs another entry, and that's Home Alone 2021.
Oh dear God.
So it's actually kind of funny. I tried to give it a little bit, because Disney poured a little bit into this, poured some extra money into it. It's like, you got this franchise and now you're, oh my God, the mouse. It was dead. It could have stayed dead. But it was alright-ish. I watched Nostalgia Critic's breakdown of it afterwards, and I was like, yeah, I agree exactly with that.
How does it hold up against the third movie?
Well, here's the thing. So, this one has this kid who is with his mother, and they stop by this house. It's an open house that they're selling, and the parents are having to sell the house because the father can't find a job and they're running out of money. And the kid happens to point out that this doll that they have is worth a lot of money, and that money could save their home. Well, the father gets a little bit, because the kid's rude as heck to the father, so the father's like, well, no, I'm not letting you have any of these free sodas. And he drinks one in front of him just to, like, saying, get out. And so...
So what is this, Frank's story now?
But, so the kid so they notice that the doll is missing when they figure out how much it's worth. And, like, where is it? That kid has it. Because it looks like he pocketed something when he left. So they're like, okay, we've got to get it. So they try to go over to the home. But the parents have left on a trip overseas. And just so happens that they leave the kid home alone because he decides to stay the night in the car. And so they're like, okay, he's home alone. We need to break in this house and take it back. We just got to get to his coat and get it. And the kid overhears them and thinks that they're going to sell him into slavery. So the kid sets up the booby traps in order to prevent them from taking him into slavery. Now, there is a lot of good in this. They did a great job with the soundtrack. They did a lot of good callbacks. That they have Buzz from the original movie all grown up, the original actor, and they actually tell you what's going on with him and Kevin currently. And it's great. I'm not going to ruin that. And I'm not going to ruin what the ending was. But here's the thing. When Harry and Marv are not good people, by any means, and they establish them as not good people, you don't feel sorry for Harry and Marv? You feel maybe a little, but after the second one when they talk about killing him.
When you think about how Kevin really was a budding sociopath, and the things that he did to them, you can feel a little empathy.
A little, but in reality, not only
especially for Marv. Marv was a follower.
But not only were they idiots, but no, I feel even less about Marv because Marv is the one who decided to do that flooding of the houses. As somebody who has dealt with minor flooding of the houses. Because he's an idiot. Because somebody
it's our calling card.
Yeah, but he's just willfully destroying.
Yeah.
It's just
I know.
As an adult who's been through flooding, I can tell you it's not fun.
No.
And so I don't feel as sorry for them. I can laugh at the antics, especially because they're dumb enough to keep going.
Yeah.
But I can't do that with these people because the people who are doing this are good people. They're down on their luck. They have a family who's going to lose their home because this kid is being a brat. And we're supposed to laugh at them being beaten up and being scared for their lives because he hits them in the head with pool balls and stuff. You see where I'm going in that. It's harder to. They're not really villains.
Villains.
So then they end it to try and wrap it up. I don't feel it's that effective. It's not that bad. It's pretty well done as a movie overall, but they could have done it better in many ways. I do like, one thing I did like a lot about it is people would say that's impossible these days. With all this technology, there's no way that this could happen. They do a very good job of setting it up so that it could happen even today.
Yeah.
It does a great job of that. So,
Cool.
Mixed bag. You know, if you're curious and you have Disney Plus anyway, check it out. It's better. I think it's done better than the fourth and fifth one.
There were that many?
Yes.
See, I've blocked that from my memory. I know there was a third one, and that's as far as my memory goes.
The first one was, the classic.
Yeah, exactly.
Second one was New York.
The second one was the classic with a new coat of paint.
Yes. The third one was supposed to have Macaulay Culkin in it, and still had a John Hughes name to it, but he was taking down secret spies.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. The fourth one was about about Kevin and his family, played by all different actors, and as they're in this fancy house because Kevin's parents divorced, and the father was marrying to this very rich woman, and she wanted to impress him, and it says even like they brought back Marv out of the two as the mastermind for the Wet Bandits to come again, and they had Marv played by, who was the guy on Third Rock from the Sun?
French Stewart,
yes.
Oh, dear God.
And so we had that, and then the fifth movie, which is the lowest rated movie.
You know your franchise is in trouble when you have French Stewart playing a character originally played by someone else.
Is about this guy. Let me see. It's about like where they moved to this place out in Maine. Ed Asner's in it. Why does Ed Asner do so many terrible movies? I mean, he was in what was it? He was in a lot of bad movies. Come to think of it, he was in Christmas Vacation 2.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And Home Alone 5 had one particular. Yes, it had Malcolm McDowell as the villain. And Ed Asner in it.
Why does Malcolm McDowell show up in some terrible stuff?
I have to admit, Malcolm McDowell and Ed Asner were the things I enjoyed the most of it.
They are usually enjoyable.
The movies themselves, the sequels aren't terrible. Matter of fact,
So that would make number 6.
Yes, this would be the 6th.
No. That would make number 6 that short film with the grown-up Kevin as an Uber driver. That was the best one since the first one.
Of course, then there's the angry video game nerd where Kevin is the pizza delivery guy, and they're playing Home Alone games.
Yes.
So it's still, they're not good movies, but they're not unwatchable.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's not unwatchable either. I'd say it's on par with some of the others. It's better done, but the fact that they do it in bad taste like that puts it back on par with 3 through 5. So,
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. So, in terms of revisiting a property, and again, something that a lot of people found a little bloated, I personally wonder because they cut 6 of the songs from the original musical, and it still runs over like 2.5 hours. But I did see the musical by John M. Cho, the director of Cho, the director of Crazy Rich Asians, did a musical adaptation, an adaptation of the musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which is called In the Heights. It was the big production he did before Hamilton, and there's a lot of similarities in the way Miranda does musicals. It has its own distinctive beat, its own distinctive rhythm. It's a little, I guess you could almost say shooting from the hip might be a good way to put it. Like, we talked about this in our discussion last week on Nightmare Before Christmas, of the idea of starting and stopping songs without necessarily, now the song starts and now it's over, that sort of thing. Like, the songs come in and out of the story. And In the Heights is that sort of deal too. He does that a lot with he'll have really long songs that are like multiple scenes of dialogue together in one song. But it's mostly a cast of moderately unknown actors. You do have Jimmy Smits in there. You do have Daphne Rubin Vega and a few other pretty big names. And it's about Washington Heights, the New York borough that this Miranda basically they grew up in, I believe. But it's sort of it's a fictionalized account about this dude who came up from Dominican Republic and wants to one day return home, and he works in the corner bodega, and he's got all these. It's a big sprawling story about a bunch of different people, and I liked it a lot. It's a very high energy film. I really liked a few of the songs. Miranda himself shows up as a frozen drink vendor, and he has one particular short song that he sings that I actually really like that song. And he said he fought to have that in the film because it was to him a sort of a shout out to like small business and like the working man and whatever. Yeah. And so that was a really fun, and there's an old lady who they refer to as Abuela, who's like the neighbor of the main character. She has like a show-stopping song at one point in the film. There were some really good moments. The film is a little long at 2.5 hours. They could have nipped and tucked it a few times. And some of the acting was a little weaker than it could have been. But overall, I thought it was a good movie, and I think it should have gotten more press than it did. I think it probably is somewhat hurt by the fact that West Side Story's waiting in the wings. Like, that's going to be out, this week or next week?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people will probably like, oh, 2 musicals. I think we'll go to the one we know better, I don't know. It's worth a look.
Come to think of it, I have watched a few 2021 films here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've watched, I watched Home Alone, which is there, and
I'm sure that'll be up for tons of awards.
I'm sure. I'm trying to think if there was another one I watched that. Oh, Bad Ben Benign. That was another one that was on there. That was a 2021 film. Mm-hmm. That was it for the 2021 films, but I have one more 2021 film.
I got 3 more
that I watched this month, which I wasn't looking to watch 2021 films that month, so it's kind of cool that they ended up that way.
Yeah.
Is I went on HBO Max and I watched a Christmas film called 8-Bit Christmas. I saw the premise and I was like, okay, cool.
I've heard of this.
Now, we've all seen most of us have seen the Christmas classic, A Christmas Story, and we even did it on Inside Movies Galore. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think it was Dane that brought up the whole premise that, most people like this because of nostalgia. It's really not that good. And I was like, no, not necessarily, because I watched it later in life and I enjoy it. It's not my favorite. It's not the classic for me because I didn't watch it as a classic. Mm-hmm. For it to become a Christmas classic, you really have to have grown up with it. I'm sorry, it just as it is.
I don't know about that.
I mean, like,
but
an annual Christmas classic.
yeah,
Or if you were to make it a modern Christmas classic, you have to kind of like watch it for years.
yeah.
And then
It doesn't happen
adapt it.
immediately.
Yeah, it takes time to build it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to build that when you've seen it as a child than
Mhm.
as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Now this, I can imagine, this is how my parents must have felt watching A Christmas Story. Because my parents would have been Ralphie's age
Mm-hmm.
in A Christmas Story.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in 8-Bit Christmas, I would have been in the same age group as the kids there. Actually, it's kind of funny. I could say it's Zennials, but it is mostly younger Gen Xers because they were all in that age group of Gen X. Us like late 70s born kids. Essentially, it's about this kid who is much like Ralphie, and he ends up hooking on to he really wants a Nintendo.
Mm.
And there are very few of them out there, and there's this one rich kid in town who has one, and he can, like, all the kids line up, and he gets to have his pick of the kids that can come in and see it, and he's a real dick, but they all deal with it because they want to see it. And he has this amazing game room, which I would have loved as a kid.
Mm.
And then something happens, and then everybody goes on this rant to ban it.
Mm.
And it ends in a different way. I'm not gonna lie. I actually teared up and almost cried a lot at the end of that.
Mm.
Because the ending really has to do with what is it? The relationship between him and his father, and the fact that they didn't get along very well, but there's something left.
Hmm.
And even now I have to stop talking about it because it really is getting to me now.
Hmm.
And that still, it takes a lot to get emotion out of me. It kind of plays on events that happened this past year for me, but still, it's still a great film. If you liked A Christmas Story, especially if you are somebody that's in that older millennial, younger Gen X generation, you should check it out because everybody from those gens, they remember the late 80s, early 90s. They remember Nintendo when it was a big thing. Even if you didn't own a Nintendo, you knew that one friend who had one. And they were ultra cool because they had one.
Yeah.
So, it was fun. It was really enjoyable, and I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I remember I had the one kid that had an Atari. I had the one friend that had an Atari, and one friend had a Nintendo, and we kind of skipped over both of those. I think when my brothers and I finally succeeded, when we finally won, it was for the Super Nintendo, and that was...
And you know what, though? I think it's I'm glad it's an HBO special because the likelihood that it's going to get a physical release is much higher. So I will definitely be adding that to the collection when it comes out physical.
Sounds good. One that I'm a little less likely to run out to get. It's good enough. And I like the director. I like the star. I like, but Guy Ritchie has a checkered past as a filmmaker, particularly when it comes to his work as a remaker of existing films. He has done some phenomenal original work. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was a friggin' classic. Snatch was a classic. Last year's The Gentleman was a delightful film. But to the best of my recollection, he has remade 3 films. I still have not seen Swept Away, which starred his then-wife Madonna, and was a remake of an Italian film. And people freaking hate that movie, like his version. And then, of course, he remade Aladdin. It was alright. And this year, he remade a French film. I can't remember what it's called, but he remade a French revenge thriller, and he remade it as Wrath of Man, which stars Jason Statham. And Jason Statham plays a guy who gets a gig working for an armored car delivery company. Like, basically an Arbor car company, yes, where his job, obviously, is moving bank loot and other similar things around under guard. And he kind of has some secrets that you can tell from the beginning that he's playing some things close to the vest. In an early delivery, he ends up dispatching a group of bandits who tried to hold them up, and becomes something of a hero, even though he flagrantly violated company policy and his boss, played by Eddie Marsan, is about to fire him. His boss is like, no, man's a hero. We need more like him on our crew. And eventually you come to find out he has reasons for this job. And they're not pleasant. And there's a shady operative played by Andy Garcia. Honestly, the whole subplot with Garcia, I didn't fully get how it really integrated into the film. It is a dark, bloody film that's probably the most joyless film I've seen from Ritchie. It's good. It's not going to get a lot of votes for me for our Versus Awards. I got it watched. But if you like dark, bloody revenge thrillers, especially ones that have a few twists, I'd give it a look. Yeah. Especially if you like Jason Statham. You know.
Well, see, my wife and I, we had started our Christmas viewing with Home Alone.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that previous night. And then we went ahead and we did a double feature the next day, which was the one I just covered, 8-Bit Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And then we followed it up with Jingle All the Way, which a lot of people considered a Christmas classic. I haven't gotten to that status yet for me.
I definitely haven't.
But it's still enjoyable. I find it entertaining. I mean, how many films have Sinbad these years? I think we did do it last year.
I think it was last year.
I remember it was a classic.
Along with the original Home Alone, if I remember correctly.
So, you know, it's still an okay film.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun enough. I mean, you got Arnold, and he's got the toy, or he's trying to get the toy, and he decided to not go Christmas shopping until Christmas Eve, which is stupid. And, you know, back in those days, you couldn't go online to do your purchasing. So you
that
had
would
to
still
go
be a stupid thing to do on Christmas Eve.
You'd never get it online at Christmas Eve. You'd have to go out then. But yeah, that's like...
I mean, even with Amazon Prime, you'd want a 2 to 3 day lead time.
Yeah, I mean, you would... I mean, it's like trying to get a PlayStation 5 these days. Very difficult. Right. I say that I've got one behind me, so, you know, but it is... It's just... it's decently enough. It's an okay... It's reasonably fun. I actually like the sequel just as much.
Mm-hmm.
With, gosh, what was his name? Larry the Cable Guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as enjoyable.
Cool.
So, you know, I'm sure people will be like, blasphemy! But it was for me. That's, Well, yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Well, speaking about potential blasphemy, I'm actually going to do my last two because one of them I have almost nothing to say about. And that was another animated short. It's called Louise. It had to do with dancers. One of them was named Louise. I really don't remember shit about it. So, it was good. I liked it better than Sugar and Spikes. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But again, one I found on YouTube, and there's a lot of films by that particular poster. So I'm probably going to check out a couple others, I guess. But anyway, the big one I'm going to end on is my other trip to the theaters for November. I ended the month pretty much with a bang, going to see Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was a very, very interesting proposition. This is a movie that, well, we know a little bit. Like, we were kind of we didn't really quite get to it when we were talking about Home Alone. That was more of a franchise that they just kept trying to milk, and it with diminishing returns, and now they're trying to come back and reboot it. This is much closer to what we've been alluding to periodically with Cowboy Bebop. Basically, Ghostbusters is a sacred cow. It's like it's one of the holiest of holies. Like, if you're going to wade into those waters, you better know where you stand. And Ghostbusters 2 stumbled because they didn't really fully... They could have done better. But then it went into development hell for years. Bill Murray was indifferent to doing a third one. Then he had a falling out with Harold Ramis that really put it on the skids. The closest we came to Ghostbusters 3 was that video game that supposedly was quite good, and I never did get to play it. I previewed it. And then you had Ghostbusters 2016, which... Talk about something that was there we go. Talk about something that was a victim of hardcore nerd rage. Ghostbusters 2016 is a perfectly decent film. It has decent laughs. Chris Hemsworth is a laugh riot. But and he's got this lovely addition. But overall, it got all this flack for trying to do let's just make everyone female and who cares. And all the nerds were saying it was just about politics and didn't even give it a chance on its own merit. But on its own merit, it is weak. It does not... Ghostbusters 2 is better than Ghostbusters 2016. I did not know this for sure until recently. I revisited it after many years because we covered those recently on Movies Galore. Partly to get prawn for Afterlife because Forrest was all about that. So in the wake of 2016, we learned that original director Ivan Reitman, his son Jason, had gone into a secret production of a new Ghostbusters. And we've known about it for like 4 years now because it was ready to come out and COVID hit. And so a year and a half late, Afterlife finally snuck into theaters, and to everyone's amazement, people love it. It doesn't have hardly any nerd rage directed towards it. And I will keep my description of the film itself light because I don't want to spoil things for people. But I will say, they did a few things right that they really needed to do. They went in a different direction, a new story. It's structured differently, but at the same time, it does come back full circle to the first film. And the events of the first film are very, very, very important to everything in this film. The other big thing is that unfortunately, Harold Ramis is no longer with us, and Egon Spengler is central to the plot of the film. They actually handle that in a way that I think was tactful, and everyone knew it was coming from a place of love. If this had been a Disney production with no one involved from the original, people would have been up in freaking arms. But it was not. We knew it was from a place of love. That made all the difference in this case. And the girl that they cast to play Daphne, the main character, looks eerily like him. She's supposed to be his granddaughter, so, she looks eerily like him. And then, of course, Paul Rudd is always fun in everything he's in. And, they did a really good job calling back to the original while creating a legit sequel to the series. So, I give them props for that. Yeah.
I had read like a couple of initial reviews saying it was really bad and it was chauvinistic.
Chauvinistic.
Yeah. Do you feel like it was?
I'm not sure in what way.
Well, I don't know. I've never seen it. Just saying that was that was one of the things about it that I think it was E or one of these that had done. Well, again, I read one of the early
Well, maybe
ones.
that was their reacting to the reaction that the other film got. I don't know.
But I feel like there was an attempt to stir controversy with this one, but it doesn't look like it took.
Well, again, we're talking about a sacred cow
Yeah.
that, in fairness, they did announce it in the wake of what was widely perceived as a failure.
It does
And
make me
that's
feel
like-
bad that the bad actors get what they want in a way.
Sometimes, yeah.
But then again, I guess,
Yeah, it's the people who stir trouble that get all the press, and then the people who actually do good stuff that don't.
Much like anything else, I will, like the 2016 one, I will hold my thoughts until I see it, and I will wait until it comes out on physical.
Right.
So I'll see it eventually.
Well, actually, come to think of it, I think this was the first Ghostbusters I saw in theaters, so I'm glad I got to see one of them. I'd like to see the original in theaters one of these
I think I
days.
saw 2 in theaters. I don't think I saw 1, but I can't remember. It's been a while.
Huh.
So one of the things, so that was all of them?
That was all of mine.
Well, I got 2 left, so I'll go ahead
Okay.
and do mine. So I showed Kim a Christmas classic. She says she thinks she did see it before, which was Tales from the Crypt, the original movie. It was 70-something. And it's just an excellent film.
Mm-hmm.
It's not entirely a Christmas film, but the first one does have a Christmas-centric story, the first of the vignettes.
Right.
Essentially, it's a bunch of people who are kind of touring this crypt, and they don't know why they're here.
Mm-hmm.
And they get trapped in this room,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy in a hood comes out and talks to each of them, and they don't know why they're there. And then he says, they go into these stories that seemingly lead up to something else happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some pretty interesting ones. There's the one that's Christmas-centric is about this killer Santa Claus. And it's kind of funny how it works because it starts with the woman in there killing her husband in order to get his money. And then as she's trying to hide the body, this killer Santa ends up showing up. So, I mean, none of these people are good that are in there. One person who is cheating on his wife and ends up in a car wreck, and you see like him come back as a zombie. Then there's one that's about this group of real estate developers who basically force a guy into committing suicide, and they end up having, again, a lot of it is about people doing bad and then having their comeuppance. It's a very good little anthology movie. It has a great end to it. It's just in general not a bad film. Still a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Still well worth a watch.
Cool.
I don't think you've seen that one, right? No. It's one that we need to put up one of these days.
I've not seen much Tales from the Crypt. I did enjoy our viewing of Demon Knight, though.
Yeah,
That
those
was
came
a-
much later.
Yeah.
This was before the show was even conceived. And then I watched a newer one called Red Christmas. This one is more divisive, especially in the time where we're looking at Roe v. Wade being overturned. This is essentially about a fetus that comes back to take vengeance on the mother that wanted to get rid of it. And it starts with a bombing of a abortion clinic. And the fetus kind of being raised by the psychotic bomber. And I must say, hold on.
I must say.
Okay. And I don't know. The director had said that he wanted it to be a movie that people who are pro-life would think it's pro-abortion, and people who are pro-abortion would think it's pro-life. So my thought is, so you wanted people to all hate your film.
That's what it sounds like.
So taking that aside, that's the fetus in the room.
Well, did he succeed with you?
I didn't hate it.
Okay. Then he failed.
Yeah, I thought that it had some general decent things to it. The kills were very interesting. Otherwise, the plot was interesting. The lighting was weird, but it worked out well. It's one I will watch again. If you are really strong one way or the other, I think you're not going to like this film. But if you're kind of willing to set that aside, I think you'll be okay with Red Christmas. I think it's one that could use a couple of watches, maybe some background info, and just a little bit of work.
Good times.
But that's it. That's November.
Alrighty then. So we got some stuff watched.
Yep, so I'm sure that when we come back next month and we talk about December, we're going to have a whole bunch to talk about.
Theoretically.
It might actually be lop-ended because my viewing has been much more limited because I'm watching Have Gun Will Travel. And I don't even know if I'll have that done by the end of December, so I probably won't even come up on this month.
We'll see. We'll see.
We will see. So with that being said, we'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye.